Hi guys. If you're listening, here is my solemn vow to you. I am not going to talk in this video about politics, the current Black Lives Matter protests, none of that. But I am going to tell you this. If you turn off this video around the 1 or 2 minute mark, you are probably going to be really mad at me. But you're going to be mad at me for the wrong thing. If you want to be mad at me and be able to argue and disagree with me, I just accidentally pushed my kid out the swing, for the right reasons, then just stick around, okay? And then we can, have a kind, civilized, intelligent conversation. Here's hoping. Okay, so I'm gonna come right out and say it. You're racist. In fact, I'll go Oprah here. You're racist, and you're racist, and you're racist, and we're all racist. There, said it. I know, sweetie. Okay, so now I know what's happening. I know that if you're watching, there's a really good chance you're thinking like, well, this is the problem with our country today. People are making all these like blanket accusations, and that's not fair, and you don't know me, and how dare you say that, and like, who do you think you are? Okay, yep, I hear ya, but let me get there, okay? Hear me out. And I just want to start by saying, like, I think, hi, sorry, I'm pushing my kid. Oh, kisses. I really don't think that as Christians we should be all that offended or surprised when we hear someone say that. Because here's the thing. Jesus stood in front of a crowd of people eagerly listening to him. Maybe a few Pharisees who were, scheming, but mostly people who really wanted to hear what he had to say. And he looked out over all those people, and he thought about all of us to come, all of us billions of people over the next centuries, and he thought of me, and he thought of you, and he looked out and he said, you're murderers. I know, sweetie, you do. And he probably didn't say it all sassy like that or whatever, but he did say that. He said, you guys want to give yourself credit for following the commandment of not murdering, people. And yeah, good job. That's a great start. But let me tell you something. You're actually still a murderer. That's really kind of who you are. If you hold hatred or disdain for a person in your heart. And so Jesus was making, helping us to understand, I don't know what she just ate, helping us dirt. He was helping us understand things that are much deeper and much realer than, our kind of straightforward yes, no, check the box, are you a murderer, are you not definitions, right? And he was calling us to dig deeper, to really think and meditate and learn and probe those parts of our heart and our thoughts that held murder, even if we weren't holding a knife. And I know that's a flower. Yeah. And then he looked out and he was like, oh, also, you're all adulterers. You're all cheating adulterers. And, the same thing, right? You might not actually have had an affair or, sex out of marriage. But if you have thought that and desired that in your heart, then same thing, right? You're still guilty, and you need to address that seriously. And, later on he was like, actually, if you can't seem to get that under control, you should probably just pluck out your eyeball. Yeah. Flower. Thank you. That's beautiful. Anyways, yeah, I would argue that after you've already been called an adulterer, and a murderer, being called a racist, like, honestly, isn't really that much of a stretch. Isn't really, right? Really, is it really that horrible after, we already have discussed what's there in your heart, what Jesus has declared to be true? I don't think it should be. I think that Christians should not be so surprised and shocked and defensive when we hear like, hey, yeah, you might kind of be racist. I think we should be like, yeah, that tracks. That sounds about right. Because if we truly understand the theology of sin, we know that our hearts are pretty darn rotten. And that whatever good is in there is a complete gift from the Holy Spirit, complete grace. And we understand that while we can be transformed by the Spirit, that's really the work of a lifetime, right? Sanctification, that's something that we never are done with. You can never be like, oh yeah, I've already read a book about being selfless, so I've got that one. I don't really need to think about that or listen to sermons about that one anymore because I'm done. No, that's not how it works, right? And yellow, thank you. It's actually pink. Anyways, so that's what racism is like. We sort of have this idea, or at least I kind of did. As a kid, I thought racism is when a person is really, really ugly, and they use the N-word, and they believe that black and white people should use different swimming pools and shouldn't get married, and might want to participate in some hate crimes. And I'm not that, right? I don't do that. That definition of racism is actually really nice because it's so easy to be on the good guy side, right? Check, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. But I am here to kind of complicate and challenge that. I think that racism is just like every other evil predilection of our hearts, and that it can be very sneaky and very subtle, and it takes work to identify it and root it out. And it also takes community and study and intention. So all of these other sins or spiritual disciplines, prayer, trusting God, or let's say turning away from cynicism or apathy, or whatever it is, right? We're used to hearing a billion sermons on that one particular passage, right? We will you've heard probably, I don't know how many youth group discussion topics on purity, right? And the fact of the matter is that it's good to constantly be working on these things and to listen to other people, because you never know when somebody's going to tell a little anecdote or story or something from their own lives that helps you see things from a different angle, or understand in a different depth or a different way, right? There's always more learning to do. Similarly with racism, well, first of all, we've got catching up to do, or at least I did. I'd probably been hearing about Jonah and the whale, and how you can't run away from God, and how we've got to love people in Nineveh since I was a really little kid, right? So those are concepts that I'm sort of used to, or have had a lot of practice with applying. No, those are my glasses. And applying and trying to examine my life, or where am I running away from God, or whatever, right? But with racism, I did not grow up hearing or talking about racism in the church from the time I was 5. I really didn't. In fact, I didn't go to a ton of retreats in high school on racism. Went to a ton of retreats on other things, right? So at least for me, and probably for you, there's decades of catching up to do, right? And just a lot of learning. I think that it's really important to read, to listen to sermons. There are some great ones out there, to read books, Christian books about racial reconciliation. But there's a lot of work to do to be able to identify the racial biases and privilege that you may have. So that's something I really encourage everybody to do. I'm sorry, I'm so scattered here. We're playing with chalk now, but I have had no time to do this. One thing that, what was I oh yeah. So anyways, I'm not Jesus, right? Unorganized. But I do feel comfortable simply exhorting and not accusing, but naming the racism chalk that we all have. And aside from just sort of like a theological understanding that we all have this wickedness that blossoms with every opportunity, every little ounce of neglect, whenever it can. But also, and this is where kind of the secular world is ahead of the Christian world, there is so much research demonstrating racial bias and how pervasive it is in our society and in individuals. I told you about how I had that one student who I treated more harshly, and because he is black, and we've got that in education. We have studies that show that patients who are black patients who are telling their doctors about pain are less likely to be believed. Doctors are less likely to take them seriously, even when they're describing the same symptoms, which also makes them less likely to get treatment. We know that babies as early as 3 months, like my little snickerdoodle over there, as early as 3 months, babies will gaze at faces that are the same color, the same ethnicity as their parents. So if you're a little baby and your mom and your dad and your grandma and the people who you see every day are white, if you're given different faces to look at, you are going to look, that baby will look longer and sort of give preference to the face that looks like the other faces they're accustomed to. So as